Hello, good morning, good afternoon, or good night, depending on what time you're watching this video. My name is Jesus Rojas, and today I'm going to be talking to you about memory. More specifically, the different ways in which we recall or retrieve said memories. But before I can get into that, I feel I must lay some groundwork, some scaffolding, if you please, as to how memory itself works and where it takes place. Now, sometime around the 1960s, brilliant minds at work at the dawn of the computer revolution equated human memory to that of a computer memory in the sense that we can only hold so much information at a time before it is either engraved onto our disk drives, long-term memory, or it gets tossed out into the garbage bin for us to forget. The two researchers whom were credited for this perfect comparison were Richard Atkins and Richard Shifrin. Now, memories are stored in the hippocampus, a small area of the brain within the temporal lobe. It's about the size of a seahorse, a baby seahorse that is, and this area of the brain is thought to be responsible for learning as well as memory. It is also a particularly delicate part of the body that can be damaged by certain repeated stimuli or trauma. Now, what is a memory? A memory is a recollection of the circumstances, the environment, and your emotional response to a specific place or time in the past. Memory works a little bit like this. You would perceive information through one of your senses, whether it be visual, whether it be auditory, or through your olfactory, even tactile. And once you receive that information, you perceive it and you recognize it, it will go onto short-term memory, which can hold about 7 ideas, somewhere around there, more or less, depending on the person. And from there, if they are rehearsed, they can be stored into long-term memory. If they are not rehearsed, they can be forgotten. We all know that repetition legitimizes and repetition makes perfect, practice makes perfect. So when it goes into long-term storage, it can either be there for about a couple of months to an entire lifetime. Now that you have a very rough understanding of what a memory is and how it is stored, we can discuss how we are able to bring them back into our minds and what type of information gets recognized or recalled. On one hand, when something is recognized, your mind does not have to retrieve the entire memory in order for you to get the information you need. This would be especially helpful in situations in which the correct answer is right in front of you, and all you have to do is recognize it. The easiest example that the book provided was a multiple choice test or on a test, a multiple choice question on a test, sorry. This process is thought to be less mentally taxing since it takes less mental resources in order to retrieve the information that you need. An example for this one that I can think about off the top of my head is my friends and I play this game called Logo Test. And we go in a circle and we quickly flash the logo, which is a logo of a very well-known established brand, minus a few of the maybe key characteristics of it. Um, the reason we play it is because it is a fast-paced game in which you have to recognize it as quick as you can and name it out. This helps because you don't need to remember the first time you saw, I don't know, the Starbucks logo. You would just recognize it. You don't have to remember the first time you saw it or where you saw it, what time you saw it. So, on the other hand, recalling a memory would be like trying to answer a written response on a test. You have to recall the entire concept and understand it in order to apply your answer. This would also mean that trying to remember what you ate a week ago for lunch would have you try to recall the entire memory of where you were, what it tasted like, who was there, instead of just recognizing a correct answer. Another personal example that I can give for this is the way that I drive. I do not like to memorize roads or street signs in order to make a mental map, which I know is very popular and I should, but I don't see the point in it, even though it's helpful. So instead what I do is I put the GPS on for the first time and I drive to the location. I pay attention to my surroundings, just where I have to turn, where I have to stop, what direction I have to go. And the second time that I do it, I just try to remember the first time I drove to that place and I follow that path in my head. That way, After the first time, I don't need a GPS to get there. Now, while there is a lot to still learn about memory and the capabilities of the human mind, I find this topic to be particularly interesting because when I moved here from Venezuela at the age of 9, I have an extremely hard time recalling my life and important moments from what was supposed to be my home. Maybe one day researchers will be able to conduct experiments on willing participants in order to stimulate their memory and fire the specific types of neurons in order to retrieve those lost memories. I'll be there and I'll be researching it up until then. And I hope you are able to learn something from this presentation. Thank you for listening. I hope you have a wonderful morning, afternoon, or a good night.